Because the government actually lied. They pulled a fast one. They told everybody it was an insurance plan, and then when it got constitutionally challenged, they came back and said it was a tax. And
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, and the way that they treated it, to be candid with you, it is a tax because they take every dime of it and spend it and put IOUs in the Social Security Trust Fund. The way that this gets solved is because it's collapsing under its own weight, and it has to change. Again, I think that the proposals put forward by the Republicans make a lot of sense. That you know, we're going to kind of move into this premium support model and gradually move away from that. And I think over time, younger people, I'm 51. I don't know anybody my age or younger that thinks they're going to get Social Security or Medicare. The gig is up. So I think the populace is ready for change. If the people on it now will get a big change.
And this question is to Mr. Watson.
Jerry Shepard from San Ynez. Thank you, gentlemen, for your views on a lot of national issues. My question brings us down a little bit more locally to the constituents that you will be representing. There are a lot of very wealthy Native American Indian tribes running casinos. One of the ways they enlarge their land holdings is with the fee to trust annexation, or that notwithstanding through, because the Bureau of Indian Affairs can no longer at the moment do that, they approach their legislators, their representatives, in other words you, asking for legislative appropriation so that annexation of our U.S. soil can be annexed into the reservation, taken off of the tax rolls. What is your position? Would you support legislative annexation for Indian tribes?
No, I wouldn't. You know, I understand a lot of this goes back, and you know, when we set up the reservation system, we made some commitments to them, and those have to be honored. But I think that, you know, continually allowing them to expand the reservation, if they want to buy property and operate it and pay, you know, follow all the rules that everybody else has to follow in the same building codes and pay the taxes and all that, that's fine. But to be able to continuously expand the reservation, I really don't think is fair, and I think that's gone well beyond what the intention of the deal was that we cut with them.
Well, maybe I shouldn't be allowed to answer this. My grandfather was half Blackfoot Indian. So, no, I think this is a local issue. I realize that they come to a congressman to get this done. But I think the first thing that needs to be done is to go to the community and see how this is received in the community. If the community supports it, then I think the congressman should go ahead and support it. If the community is against it, I think the first response is not to a sovereign nation living within the United States, but the first response is to the American citizen and we the people.
Sir, this question will go to Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, a question. What is your stand on tort reform for Medicare?
Wow. My ex-father-in-law was a cardiologist. He actually gave up his service, and he had a very successful service down in Los Angeles. He gave up his service, or his practice, because the malpractice insurance became so astronomical that he had to charge so much and run so many tests on people to protect himself from a lawsuit. They said, this isn't worth it anymore, so he became a consultant. This was a long time ago, and it hasn't gotten any better. I think tort reform is the very first thing that must be done in this country to help medicine in this country. If you do that, if you first of all define what malpractice is, because right now, I mean, DuPont got hammered for silicone breasts that turned out were not causing cancer. You know, and it cost them billions of dollars to defend this and to close down their operation, and all because of medicine tried in the courts, and with class action lawsuits. I mean, this has to stop. We need to clearly define what malpractice is. We need to limit as to how much a person can get in a malpractice lawsuit, and put really definite things on it so the doctors don't have to order 21 tests and we don't. That's one of the reasons why medicine is so high today. You order all these tests to protect their backsides from a malpractice suit that aren't even necessary. And it'll plummet the cost of medicine in this country if we can just get that done.
Tort reform is a huge issue. Unfortunately, you run into that pesky 10th Amendment because most torts are on a state level with these things. Very few of them are on a federal level, so it's really up to the states to do tort reform on their own. Personally, I am a huge fan of the English system where if you bring a suit against somebody, you want to sue them, fine. But if you lose, you pay all the legal fees. And that really cuts down on the amount of legal traffic and stuff that you get in these things. It's pretty crazy. There's some estimates that probably roughly 10% of our healthcare costs are directly attributable to avoidance and additional costs for insurance and that sort of thing.
This question from Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson, yes, sir.
Hi. Back in 1959, I saw my homeland destroyed, essentially, by a communist tyrant. His first order of business was to go through gun registration records and send people house to house confiscating firearms. Left the entire population totally defenseless. The tyrant is still there. What is your position on the Second Amendment, gun control, gun ownership?
Well, again, I'm an originalist. The Second Amendment means exactly what it says, and the courts, fortunately, have ruled that way repeatedly over the centuries. It's an individual right to keep and bear arms. It's interesting, the Germans and the Japanese, after the war, and they were debriefed, one of the things they both said was, well, we never really considered invading America because there's 200 million guns. And that's the biggest army in the world. So I believe in gun rights, and I think that it's quite clear and it needs to remain the way it is, and I think that this court will continue to rule that way.
The question is bigger than just gun rights. Our amendments were put in place to protect us from our government. After they did the Constitution, they said, well, what if they do this? Well, what if the Second Amendment is probably our biggest protection against our government. I was in the Philippines when Marcos registered all guns, and once they're all registered, he confiscated all guns. Once we breach one amendment, the socialists will say, okay, the amendments we have set the precedent that they can fall. Once we breach one, and that is the most vulnerable, once we breach one, they're all gone. And they protect us from our government. No amendment can fall. On the other side of that, I used to go to NRA shoots with Chuck Heston.
All right, that was one of those two. Thank you.
For Mr. Mitchell.
Sir, today the news announcements were that our president is sending more military troops into some obscure country in Africa.
Uganda.
Pardon me?
Uganda.
Uganda?
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to ask both of the candidates what their opinion is on the War Powers Act and the constitutional requirements that the Congressman has to uphold in regard to war.
Obama already has shown that he doesn't really care about the War Powers Act when he took action in Libya. And that is turning out to be something of a major disaster. They just found out, I believe today, that their supply of surface-to-air missiles have vanished. Those get into the hands of terrorists, you're going to start seeing planes fall out of the sky in this country from those missiles. Obama, he got around Markey's cap and trade bill in the House by empowering the EPA cap and trade powers. This guy has done more to subvert our government and twist it and turn it and mess up this country than probably any 10 bad presidents have in the past. We need to get back to what is said, that the Congress has the power to initiate a war by a vote. They have the power to fund and unfund military action. And we have to, well, first thing we got to do is get Obama out of office.
Most legal scholars think that the War Powers Act is itself unconstitutional. I'm surprised it hasn't been challenged, to be candid with you. The Constitution is very clear that the chief executive, the president, in our case, unfortunately, Obama, is the one that is responsible for the armed services. We can't have 535 generals in Congress trying to run our military activity. That said, you should not commit our troops without at least consulting Congress, like he has done now on 2 separate terms, with both Libya and now this Uganda thing. I think that the guy really doesn't think through these things and is not playing very smart politics, as well as just leadership.
We'll have 2 more questions, and then we'll go into the wrap-up.
You both mentioned that you were for closing the borders and sealing them, making sure that no more illegals come over. However, 50% of the people that are here illegally actually came legally on visas. So I'm curious as to what kind of interior enforcement both of you would support.
I'm sorry, what kind of what?
What kind of interior enforcement, as opposed to just closing the borders? But once you get past the borders, what kind of enforcement would you support?
Sure. The federal government is responsible for controlling immigration and doing these things. One of the things that I do not like about what they did in Arizona is they tried to make businesses do the job of the INS and the federal law enforcement. That is not the role of business to enforce immigration laws. The federal government should have their act together enough to have a database of people that are here and give them some kind of a card that can be tracked and get this E-Verify thing working. It's ridiculous. We can put a man on the moon. We can certainly get an E-Verify system that will work. And they're the ones that need to do this and step up and get it right. I really, and I'll emphasize this as an employer myself, putting employers that on the hook with all these huge fines and penalties for trying to comply with the law when you have no real way to check that these people are in fact legal is a problem. And I really think that the federal government has just got to commit to doing this, getting E-Verify working, getting a workable guest worker program, get the numbers that farmers need, and the hospitality industry and all these things, and enforce it that way. But people that are overstayed their visas and things like that, I think that we need to do a better job of tracking them down and evicting them. It's pretty much a joke. I'm sure you've all seen the pictures of Obama's aunt and uncle in Boston, and how much that they have both just absolutely abused our system and our welfare system, and it's a travesty. They've both been on deportation lists for many, many years, and yet they're still here, and they're hardly alone.
Well, once we sort out the 13 million plus or minus that are here and get them out of the country or repatriate them, I grew up in California where we had the Becerra program until our dear friend Jerry Brown and the socialist unionizer Cesar Chavez ended that program so they could unionize the farm worker. Before that, a Mexican farm worker could come in, earn a living, take care of the crops when the season was over, go back home and be with his family. Now they come in, they got to stay because they can't get back across the border because they may not get back in to work some more. And that's why it was done, so they were living here, now Chavez could unionize them. I mean, what kind of a union is this when their parent union is the United Auto Workers, for God's sake? What do they have to do with farming? I mean, this is crazy. I think the Becerra program worked before. Let's get it back in.
Mr. Watson will go first for 3 minutes.
Well, thanks again for coming. It's, again, really good to see everybody, and I know that we're all really, really concerned about the direction of our country, and we all agree that we're in deep, deep trouble, and we need to change course. But the only way we can change course is to win elections. The way our system is set up, as Chris pointed out, with the 2 years for the House, thank God, it's like a circuit breaker that has at least stopped all this nonsense. I think we'll probably win back the Senate, and I think President Obama is in deep trouble. But we have an opportunity for the first time in almost 18 years to get an actual conservative in office. Abel Maldonado is certainly not a conservative, and I don't want to see that man in Congress. I believe I'm the best chance for us to take this seat back. Last time I ran, I made up a lot of ground on Lois. She had typically would win by 35 points or so for the last several elections. She won by 19% last time. And over half of the vote that I lost by came from downtown Oxnard, about a 3 or 4 square mile area in downtown Oxnard. That is now out of our district. The new district is Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County, a little bit of northern Ventura County. I would have won this district last time. If you look at the votes that I was able to get, and